Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on what keeps us coming back, how to build customer loyalty. I'd like to start by thanking the School of Hotel Administration and the Pillsbury Institute for Hospitality Entrepreneurship for hosting our webinar. My name is Helen Chun. I'm a consumer psychologist and an associate professor of services marketing at Cornell, and I'm very excited to welcome you all today. Should you have any questions during the webinar, please send them via our chat. We have today 4 wonderful panelists with us who are innovators and forward thinkers in different parts of the hospitality ecosystem. They'll bring diverse perspectives on how to build loyalty. I would like to welcome Ashwin Kamlani, Executive Vice President at Cognitive, and Jacqueline Nunley, Head of Hospitality at Salesforce, Elliot Hamlish, Executive Vice President of Loyalty and Revenue Optimization at Wyndham Hotels, David Rochefort, President of Graduate Hotels. So welcome, everyone. And how about we take turns and briefly have you introduce yourself to the audience? Ashwin, probably can start.
Sure. Well, Helen, I will echo your comments. I would like to thank Cornell and the Pillsbury Institute as well, and you especially for all the work that I know you've put into organizing this, so thank you all. Mm-hmm. So I'm Ashwin Kamlani, MMH graduate 2003. Started my career with a technology background in consulting, and then with hospitality, worked for Melia Hotels and Resorts, learning everything about e-commerce in the 2000s. Started a company called Regatta Travel Solutions in 2010, which focused on online conversions for hospitality and user experience, and sold that company to Cognitive, which is building a worldwide network of loyalty programs.
Jacqueline?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Helen, for having all of us. This is such a wonderful group. And my name is Jacqueline Nunley. I have been at Salesforce for about 3 years. I started my hotel industry journey a long time ago with over 20 years of experience coming from the hotel industry. I worked with brands and hotels within the industry, and my career was mainly based in online distribution, which I absolutely fell in love with, as it helped me connect brands with their customers, which is the most important thing in our business. So I have worked with Sabre Hospitality and also with Oracle Hospitality, where it was Microsystems when I started my career. And I'm really happy to be here today. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk about this really important subject in our industry as we move towards recovery.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Elliot, floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thanks, Helen. Appreciate it. And again, I will extend a thank you to you and to Cornell and to the Pillsbury Institute. Really looking forward to today's conversation and to our panelists as well. Should be a fun one. So brief background, I've been with Wyndham for about 5 years. I've spent time in sales, loyalty, partnerships, and more recently, revenue management and distribution. So making my way through all of the top line functions at Wyndham, which has been a lot of fun and really learning a lot as we go. I spent a few years prior to Wyndham at Starwood Hotels, now obviously a part of Marriott. And before that, spent some time both at Deloitte Consulting and started my career at American Express back in the day. So have jumped around from industry to industry and have now found a nice home in the hospitality world. And while I am not a Cornell alum, I did grow up in Ithaca. So born and raised, I'm a townie, an Ithaca townie, and so consider myself a Cornell alum by association, which my wife, who is a Cornell alum, reminds me of regularly. And with that, Helen, I will hand it back over to you.
Awesome, Elliot. David, we can go to you.
Thank you, Helen. It's an honor to be here. Cornell has once again found a way to ensure I'm the least intelligent on a panel. So I'm excited to be surrounded by such esteemed colleagues. I'm a Cornell class of 2010, a hotelie. And Elliot, I actually married a townie. So Ithaca and Cornell near and dear to my heart. I have been with AJ Capital and Graduate Hotels since our inception in 2014. I've worked in many different components of a vertically integrated company, from asset management to investments to development, and now eventually in my role as president of both the brand and operations and the real estate side. We're a brand and we have 29 hotels, which is a quick explosion of growth over 7 years, and continue to grow in our niche markets of university-anchored towns.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited about our today's discussion on customer loyalty, such an important topic. And at this critical moment in time, we are still in a pandemic, but with much more promising outlook for the future of travel now, with widespread vaccine distribution and more borders are slowly opening up. It's wonderful that we have this opportunity to discuss the evolving nature of customer loyalty and what loyalty truly means to customers and travelers of today and tomorrow. I also want to point out that what's really at the core around loyalty discussions is not just about how we make the next program, next products savvier, but really starting from a place where do we really understand how to create relevant value in the most meaningful way and understand what inspires, what motivates, what engages customers to have this meaningful long-term relationship with a company. So without further ado, let's start from probably Ashwin, especially, with everything going on with COVID. How should companies create more value out of their loyalty programs and products? And I think the legacy points-based systems wouldn't go away anytime soon, but why is loyalty evolving these days, and how do you see it further changing?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So prior to COVID, and by the way, I used to live in the United States. Now I live in Rome, but when I was in the United States, I remember on my keys for my car, I had probably 10 or 20 of these little plastic, keychain cards with a barcode on it for whatever store, right? Petco, PetSmart, Kroger, all the different grocery stores, you name it. Even my wife's tanning salon, she'd probably kill me if she knew I said that. But the point is that every time you walk into a store, you get hit with, hey, sign up for our program. It's not really communicated well, what the value is going to be, but people tend to just sign up, scan that card, even though they don't know really what they're getting out of it. Mm-hmm. And so I think, pre-COVID, we were drowned in this proliferation of loyalty programs, and they were all quite commoditized. And unfortunately, I think consumers have come to think that you don't really get much value out of loyalty programs these days. So what has COVID changed? Well, I think, a lot of people have been trapped at home, interacting with fewer brands, probably the ones they feel most comfortable and loyal with. And so I think a lot of companies have spent the last year and a half thinking, how do we lock in this loyalty? How do we give much more back to that customer, give them much more value for sharing their data with us, for trusting us, and for bringing their business to us? So how is that done? Well, I firmly believe that we're going to see a lot more collaboration between companies. As a hotelier, and I was on the hotel side of the business, I remember when we wanted to give more value back to the customer, to incentivize them to book direct or to choose a certain hotel, we were somewhat limited in what we could offer, right? So it's like you could get a free upgrade if it's available. Maybe we throw in some food or a spa credit, but we were always limited to what we had within the walls of the hotel. And so I think what collaboration with other companies creates is this opportunity for us to bring much more to the table about what added values could be offered to a customer. A quick anecdote, I had a conversation recently with an airline that told me that pre-COVID, one of their biggest challenges was that 70% of their first class seats were going for free. In other words, they were using those for free upgrades. And they said to me, if I could find some way to get just a little bit of revenue for those first class seats, that would be better than nothing. So let's say there's a luxury hotel that wants to offer a free first class ticket if this customer flies on this airline and then stays at this hotel. Well, if that hotel will pay us even $200 for that upgrade, even though the perceived value is $2,000, everybody wins in that scenario. The airline gets more revenue, the hotel gets this amazing reward for their valuable customer, and the customer is thrilled, right? So just a little example of what we're talking about here. But the environment and the plumbing, the technology has just never existed for those types of direct relationships. So just to sum it up, if you extrapolate that beyond hospitality, right? If you can identify with data what's most important to each customer, if I'm a pet lover and my most important program is PetSmart, and if there's a way for all the industry to, invest in that program to reward that customer accordingly, then I think it changes the landscape of loyalty and how different companies can work together.
Thanks, Adrian. So those partnerships can improve, I think, the members' experience through those relevant benefits beyond merely really creating earn and burn type of channels. So I see the clear benefit to that. And probably, Jacqueline, building on Adrian's point of view, how is the loyalty across industry changing in your view, and how does that impact hospitality?
Sure. So when we look at the most obvious trends, I think that what's top of mind is where engagements kind of look different, based on what Ashwin just said about last year. And, it still looks different. And travelers' loyalty has really shifted or reset since the onset of the pandemic. But what's more important is that these travelers actually expect to see differences going forward. So when we talk about, a 360-degree view of the customer and understanding who the customer is, it's really about putting the customer at the center of everything that travel brands are trying to do or want to do. And this year we're seeing, a kind of like coming together of where personalization matters even more. So it's clear that putting loyalty members, at the center of everything is transformative. And, it's a factor in driving customer satisfaction and business growth. But over the past week, if you've, been on any seminars or webinars, what we're hearing is that engagement is not down. So customers are still dreaming about travel. They're interested in keeping their accounts active. And what's really interesting, where we're heading into this new phase, is to think about how you can leverage that customer data and behavior to actually meet guests where they are, or travelers where they are. So we're looking at how, Salesforce helps with optimization and management of loyalty programs, but really where it is that we have an impact and where hoteliers need to focus is really putting that customer data in the center with a 360-degree solution. And whether that's finding opportunities or insights that, realize business visions or help develop promotions, or the ability to send audiences to those downstream systems, it's really how companies take action on the information that they're collecting today and bringing it full circle to be able to measure how those actions are actually performing, and also how to get smarter and smarter about your audience's needs. So the other area of where we see loyalty shifting from a consumer perspective, of course, is experiential loyalty. And this is where, building emotions really matters. Now, in the past, we saw, like Ashwin mentioned, we saw loyalty programs with double functions. And that was persuading customers to come back by offering incentives for repurchase, or it was tracking customer habits. thus, structuring that customer knowledge based on what you were going to market to the customer. And not much has changed with the programs today, except that the customer has changed. And that's a clear signal for a shift. So similar to the trends once affecting loyalty, we see programs have to become more experiential. And while cultivating customer relationships is not really that new, it can be incredibly rewarding for the business over a long period of time. So loyal customers, will go out of their way to spend more time, to spend more money with a brand. And the intention is to give you that business, you the hotelier that business, so long as they feel valued and their experiences are seamless, they're productive, they're memorable, and even delightful. So emotional loyalty really means, customers are emotionally engaged. And these are the sort of customers who will spend with a brand with no matter what.
Yeah, thank you, Jacqueline. I'm going to circle back to you about the point that you made on personalization later on. And I'm so glad that you are bringing up this emotional loyalty aspect, because when we think about loyalty, it is not just about behavioral loyalty. How often, how frequently can we bring the customers to our company, our store? But it has that emotional, attitudinal loyalty component that is usually, people lose sight of that important aspect. So how we really build that emotional, strong connections, another pillar of building loyalty. So let's go to Elliot. How do Ashwin's and Jacqueline's views resonate with you? And can you share with us how the Wyndham loyalty program has been evolving, and what have been top successes for Wyndham in revamping loyalty programs that have come out of this pandemic?
Yeah, so I'll pick up on a couple of points that Jacqueline and Ashwin made, just jotting down some notes as I go here. Jacqueline mentioned the importance of meeting customers where they are, and Ashwin mentioned that customers have been trapped at home for the past year plus. And so that's interesting, right, for the hospitality industry, where, we collectively don't make a lot of money when customers are sitting at home. Rather, we'd have them staying in our hotels. So it's been an interesting conundrum, I think, for us all to contemplate over the past, call it 14 plus months, how to manage through that. And from our perspective, I'll highlight the concept of partnerships as an interesting way to extend one's loyalty program to reach our members where they are in a way that is genuine and meaningful to them. So if, I guess I'll start with something that applies to everyone, which is flexibility, right? We know that if our members aren't traveling now, or for the few that are, we need to meet them with flexible cancellation policies. We need to make it easier for them to maintain their loyalty status. We need to, in cases where programs have point expiration, we need to make sure that points aren't expiring so that members, when they do travel again, have the opportunity to use those points for future trips. And so that's a set of initiatives or activities that I think are broadly applicable across the industry. And you've seen Wyndham and many of our competitors go down that path. Where I start to think we differentiate to a great extent is through partnerships. And I'll highlight a few that Wyndham has that I think have really worked to our members' benefit over the course of those past 14 months. And it's things like we have a partnership with a company called Collinson that provides an earn mall. So when customers are sitting at home, not traveling and not staying in hotels, they have the opportunity to earn Wyndham Rewards points when they're shopping online. Another great example is a partnership we have with a company called Home Chef. So this is meal kit delivery for customers who are cooking at home in all of their spare time when they're not commuting. Another partnership where our members have the opportunity to earn Wyndham Rewards points for future travel when they stay at a Wyndham. So those are a couple of examples of how I think partnerships leveraging the currency of a loyalty program help to really extend the reach and maintain the engagement of customers when they're not on the road. The last thing I'll highlight, and this is, again, specific to how the last year has played out, there have not been a lot of customers jumping on a plane to fly somewhere, but there have been many jumping in their cars to drive somewhere, right? So we've seen a significant uptick in road trips and long weekends, potentially in even a neighboring city or a neighboring state where you don't have to go that far, but it gives our customers or our members the opportunity to get out of the house and experience somewhat of a vacation. If they're not flying to Disney, maybe they're going to, again, a neighboring state for a long weekend. And so with a new credit card that we launched, we call it the Earner Card, last September, we actually have an earn accelerator for gas. So when you fill up at the tank, you earn 5 times the number of points that you would have previously or for a normal dollar. And so incorporating this concept of everyday spend categories for the types of categories that we know customers are spending on is yet another way for us to maintain that engagement when we know customers aren't as likely to be traveling. And that's all with an eye toward making sure that our customers, when they are ready to travel again, have racked up those Wyndham Rewards points and know that there's a Wyndham nearby to welcome them when they are ready to get back out on the road.
Thank you, Elliot. But I also feel that the pandemic accelerated this trend, but really the collaborative partnerships that Ashwin has been talking about and your point about flexibility and giving much more abundant options in the hands of consumers. I believe that has been the trend even pre-pandemic, right? Because when we think about hospitality brands, people are not traveling all the time. They are mostly, not traveling. Maybe some customers travel 3 to 4 times a year. And how can you make your brand relevant, stay relevant and meaningful when you are not traveling? So I think there was the bigger fundamental question that has been slowly changing, but that somehow with the pandemic, now everyone is staying at home, they pushed that envelope. Am I interpreting this correctly, Elliot?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly right. The handful of partnerships that I've highlighted pre-existed COVID, right, with the exception of the credit card that launched last September. And to your very good point, those just happen to be in the right place at the right time, right? We're very well utilized prior to, and we've seen an uptick in utilization amongst all of those because everybody is sitting at home. So you're exactly right. That proliferation of partnerships to extend loyalty programs' reach for members has existed and really ramped up over the past handful of years, but has been exacerbated and catalyzed over the past year to a great extent.
Helen, just a quick comment. I think, first of all, what Elliot and Wyndham have done is phenomenal, because it's exactly what's needed in terms of taking a loyalty program mentality in the hotel industry and thinking, well, what can we do for this customer when they're in our hotel, right? To, wait a minute, how do we actually improve this customer's life even beyond their stay in the hotel because they're a member of this program, right? Wyndham Rewards is a real currency. And so, how do we make that currency more valuable out there in the world so that customer wants to accumulate more of that currency, right? Mm-hmm. So I think what they've done is just perfect.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So Dave, now back to you. How do graduate hotels build and drive customer loyalty as a really relatively younger brand, exciting brand? And how have you been navigating customers' new normal these days with your brand? Yeah,
so I would say affectionately that we've battled with this idea of loyalty from the day we launched. And specifically, we knew that we didn't have the size and scale. We didn't really have the locations specific. And we're such a differentiated and our point of view as a brand is so specific that some of these ideas of what I'll call the legacy kind of points driven loyalty programs were not who we are. And I think we recognized that early. We recognized that's not our customers that are drawn to who we are. And so we've really tried to differentiate in a different way, which is, what Jacqueline said. I mean, from day one, an emotional attachment to our brand has been what we have tried to really drive with our customers. And we do that through really differentiated design. We do that through nostalgia for the college experience, which we do through design as well as programming and activations in these local markets. We do it with a lot of local outreach. And so it's for to use a terrible analogy, it's used too much. It's a lot of hand-to-hand combat in these local towns to really create an emotional experience as someone will walk away and say, you know, one, that was worth the premium I paid, and two, it's okay I didn't earn points at the product next door, and I can't wait to come back. I also think we've taken an approach as we've gotten larger, as we built our database, that we just don't believe our customers are kind of one size fits all. And what I mean by that is, you know, we know that when parents are coming to visit their kids or are moving them in, oftentimes we find what they really want is not necessarily points, but what they would really love is just first access to booking graduation 4 years, or access to the big football weekend, so they can kind of have that, and they're willing to, you know, not even take a discount. They just want accessibility, and that's something that we can give, or you know, it's access to food and beverage. It's a personal note from a GM. And so we've been spending a lot of time, and by the way, I'm going to make this sound much easier than it is, and everyone can attest to this, but through a lot of work in our data, which I know we'll talk about in a bit, but through a lot of work in our data and our systems, we've been really working to segregate our customers, to know our customers in a way that we can really give them what we believe they want, which can be a lot of different things, but it is very highly personalized. It's very high touch. And we believe that that's how we'll ultimately win. If we play the game of the bigger brands, we're going to lose. We just don't have the size and scale to compete on that level. And you know, in some ways the partners that we look for are usually smaller and evolving, and they're like-minded. We just don't have the database to hand to some of these larger partners to create other programs, but we can be emotional. We can really connect with our customers. And we believe we can create a lot of lifetime loyalty, particularly through this life cycle of, you know, you think about this first year student. We housed 1,500 students through the pandemic in our hotels across the country. We think that's actually loyalty. Like, they're going to tell their parents about us. They will stay as alumni. They'll create a real emotional connection through this life cycle that just really works for us as a brand and where we are today. Elliot, how many Wyndham Rewards members do you all have?
We are up over 86 million enrolled members at this point.
That makes me drool. We're going to hit 1 million in our database this year, so which is like, it feels like the biggest accomplishment ever. But we know we have extremely loyal guests that do you know, love what we're doing, and we also have 29 hotels, and not the Wyndham chain either. So it's just a different game in our world. It's high touch, high personalization. And by the way, at 86 million, you can't do what we're doing. I mean, you can't do the same thing. So we're at that kind of scale to be able to do some of what we can do on a personalization level. But we think that's really how we're connecting and creating lifetime loyalty to our brand.
Thank you, David. With that really quirky and so interesting brand personality, I think a graduate is uniquely positioned to cultivate that deep emotional connection. So I want to move on to another point here, but I want to involve David and Elliot in this discussion. So more than 90% of the hotels in the US are franchised operations with an asset-light approach. And Wyndham is one of the world's largest hotel franchising companies, and franchisees rely on the hotel brands to bring guests in. But they are also paying Wyndham the percentage of that revenue each time loyalty member stays and earns points, right? And some of these fee will be paid out when points are redeemed for loyalty nights, but the reimbursement amount will vary depending on the occupancy rate. So just in case some of the audience may not be well aware of this fact, I just wanted to bring this up, and just asking Elliot, what could be, or what are the challenges that you see in managing the relationship with your franchisees over loyalty issues?
Yeah, so just to give everybody some perspective on sort of scale and size, as David was mentioning before with their 29 hotels, we have more than 9,000 hotels around the world, 100 different countries. We have about 6,000 hotels in North America, another 3,000 hotels in other regions around the world. So the size and scale of Wyndham is pretty significant. And to your point, I think a theme that's developing here is this is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? With 9,000 different hotels, there's certainly distinct distinctions that need to be drawn. And in the case of our franchisees, it's very much a high touch engagement. Thousands of franchisees around the world that we engage with on a very regular basis. But you bring up an interesting point here, Helen, which I think is worth spending a couple minutes on, which is we actually have we as a loyalty program and we as Wyndham really have two very distinct customer sets. One is our franchisees, our hotel owners, and the other is the guests that stay in our hotels. And finding a way to sort of find the right balance between those two, recognizing that we have two distinct customers to serve is something that I wake up every morning thinking about and fall asleep every night dreaming about how we can continue to do that better and better. And I think important to note here that hotel owners have an option as to whether to maintain their independence or to sign up with a big brand. And if they do sign up with a big brand, there's an expectation that the dollars that they're paying into that brand for the brand standards and the loyalty program and all of the reservations, all the things that they get through that will have a return for them, right? That they're going to be able to derive a meaningful value. Otherwise, not worth it, right? And better to maintain their independence. And so as somebody who's involved very regularly from a loyalty perspective, from a revenue management perspective, we spend a lot of time and effort thinking about how to drive outsized value for our owners. And from a loyalty perspective, it's all about attracting and engaging and retaining our members, right? Those 86 plus million enrolled members are the ones who are most likely to pay more, stay longer, come back time and time again. And that's the power of the dollars that our franchisees are paying us to run the program. We're pouring that back into marketing and rich point offers and messaging and thanking our members for coming to stay with us and maintaining that and by the way, those partnerships that we talked about before, right? Some of that helps to maintain those partnerships so that we're engaging our members not only when they're staying with us, but when they're not as well, right? And so it's that sort of virtuous cycle, if you will, dollars coming in from the franchisees being poured back into marketing efforts and loyalty offers that provide value and attract new members into the Wyndham Rewards program. And then in turn, that's encouraging those members to come back and stay to drive value for our franchisees. And so it's thinking about that entire cycle, both from a macro and a micro perspective to ensure that we are maintaining the right amount of value being driven for both of those audiences, the franchisees on one end and our Wyndham Rewards members and guests on the other.
Thanks, Elliot. I appreciate the broader ecosystem perspective with loyalty. Let's get back to David. So as an owner and operator brand, you must have a different point of view on this. So how do graduate hotels work with employees and partners in your effort to create loyalty?
So while I drool over Elliot's 86 million loyal members, I'm sure he's very jealous of the agility and nimbleness that we can move as owner, operator, and brand. And, it is something we've taken very serious that because we can make these conscious decisions with our capital dollars, with kind of every decision, we can drive this down to our associate level on property and really train and help them understand kind of their role and impact to the broader mission of Graduate and the growth of Graduate and really bring them into the fold of what we're building together. And, some of that is the simple engagement that occurs at a front desk, everything from, as anybody knows, if you book on an OTA, which anyone that should be tuning into a Cornell hotel school should not be booking via OTAs. They should be going direct with brands and hotels. But anytime you book via an OTA, not only are you paying a commission, but the OTA is retaining a lot of all your information. And so there's a simple engagement that is very open and honest with the guest. And if we can get an email, we can start to convert them to a direct guest, right? We can give them an offer that is specific to us. We can upgrade them in a different way. We can give them food and beverage credits. We can give them access to different items and anything that we can start to move them, especially from an OTA reservation to a direct channel is significant. I think we were actually running some of the numbers, and Elliot, you probably know in your world is vastly different, but somewhere from like the 18 to 20% margin on an OTA reservation to 4% a direct reservation in our world. So it's a significant cost savings to move them to direct, but also you have the loyalty component long-term of converting those to a lifetime guest. And then, the thing I think that is the most unique given our size and scale and direct conversations we're having with so many of these guests is that we can actually respond so quickly to our customers as they are communicating with us, whether that's on property via SMS and different systems we have in place or post-stay emails. We can adapt so quickly and implement and hear them so much faster than having to move, the big ship that is some of the bigger brands. We just have a nimbleness that is unique at our size and scale. I will tell you, it gets harder and harder every year as we grow to do some of those things. And as we get into different markets, like we're opening in New York City, we're opening in the UK later this year, it gets harder and harder, but we're still at that perfect kind of size and scale. I actually pick and choose it whether I call ourselves a brand one day or a collection of hotels the other, depending upon who I'm speaking to. But that's kind of where we're at is still a direct connection with those customers, being able to listen to what they're saying, implement very easily. In some cases, we can do things overnight if it's something that we feel is really important. And then really creating a connection on property between our employees and the guests and customers.
Thanks, David. That making that fluid and cultivating the relationship with your employees at this stage of your brand growth as a younger brand is incredibly important for the long-term growth. So I appreciate for sharing that. Yeah. I'm very much cognizant of the time. So let us move on to another very important topic on data and technology that we've been talking about how loyalty is becoming less transactional, but more personalized to the customer experience. So I want to start from Jacqueline. How does the Salesforce help hospitality companies with data to personalize the experience using your platform? Can you get into it?
So the subject of personalization, I love this. So, travelers' expectations have really shifted, as we continue to adjust to this, pandemic life. And while health and safety is really paramount, personalization matters even more, which I mentioned earlier. Now, we know that consumers are quickly abandoning brands where there's no personalization or trust factor, like Elliot had mentioned. And earlier I talked about personalization mattering, and traditionally what we are seeing in the market is that we've really been focused on collecting all of the information about travelers' attributes, their behaviors, their identity. And with the convergence now of business and work from anywhere and leisure, travelers' needs are differing wildly. So travelers now want companies to understand their intent, their motivation, their sentiment, and who they are in the moment is what leads to a minimum of, their loyalty. So what's really important here is about how you're leveraging technology to help with the collection and the automation of historic identifiers and free up resources to actually focus on the customer. So at Salesforce, we think that, AI-driven personalization can really help most of our customers and a lot of, potential customers out there really focus on helping with journeys or determining, traveler sentiment, anticipating the next steps along the journey. And this has also had, a cognitive component to the otherwise traditionally human-powered and automated tasks that are associated with personalization. Because eventually what we want to help our customers do is turn that, need for personalization through using CDPs or utilizing, other solutions like the 360-degree view of the customer and making sure that your marketing actually speaks to what the customer's needs are. We're seeing that this will eventually turn into personalization from a proactive standpoint, which is anticipating and meeting the needs of those travelers, interpreted to create that summarization and description of such traveler, and then be able to provide a personalized experience on, a consistent basis. So the other component of, personalization, especially after the pandemic or during the pandemic, is consistency. And with commercial aspects of travel and investments in technology, this is what is going to determine how companies and brands reduce their costs while increasing operational efficiencies, while still delivering that consistency. So we've seen the move to remote everything really underscored the need for brands to move to mobile apps to manage communication for travelers, to manage communication for employees. One, so that workers could be reached wherever they are, but more importantly, to handle the multiple nuances of roles that may have existed in the past with leaner teams on property. So we're seeing brands coming back to business with leaner teams. We're seeing the consolidation of roles due to the challenges around hiring in our industry. And we're thinking about how we can actually help brands do more with less. So process automation, task optimization becomes key. When you're thinking about digitizing operations, and AI tools, when used ethically, can really help contextualize and improve those results of connecting with customers and optimizing your business with consistency and letting hotel brands do what they do best, which is being hospitable.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So I want to touch upon this interesting point about really you're putting consistency and creating unique experiences, meaningful experiences in the same breath. So going to Elliot, at Wyndham, how has such a platform, although you are using a different customer data platform, has been working for you, creating this, opening up this creative opportunities because you are taking care of the consistency element of it. And I also want to hear a little bit about your data collection and any further experimentation you are doing to get smarter about customers.
Yeah. Well, how much time do we have? I could go on for a couple hours on.
Not
a couple hours. I'll keep it brief. Jacqueline mentioned a word that I think of often and that our teams are very focused on, which is this concept of journeys, right? So when we first learn about someone, they could have signed up to be a Wyndham Rewards member. They could have stayed on property and not signed up to be a Wyndham Rewards member. We typically know very little about him or her in that instance. And so the task ahead is to find out as much as we possibly can about that individual to deliver the most personalized experiences possible. Those experiences could be on property. They could be through digital channels. They could be through a phone call to say thank you, any or all of the above. And it's this concept of making sure that everybody is on their personal journey, right? No two journeys should hypothetically look alike. And in sort of being able to achieve that, it's a lot about testing and learning, right? So it's about creative differences. It's about copy changes. It's about offer construct A versus offer construct B to understand what resonates most with specific members and specific guests to ensure that as they proceed along their journey, we're meeting them where they are. There are some guests, for example, that never go online, always like to call in, right? We should know that sending that individual an email may or may not actually work, right? And so we may need to think of alternative means to communicate with that specific individual. There are others that will never pick up the phone and call the call center and instead always like to text, right? Or to book via the app. And so understanding those channel preferences is also an important part of this. And so that test and learn approach and mentality is an important part of our day-to-day. You mentioned this concept of a CDP. So we last year partnered with a company called Amperity, late 2020, really to form that 360-degree view of the customer that Jacqueline had mentioned before. And we're inputting all of this data as we go through this test and learn into this single source of truth, if you will, this 360-degree view, and then leveraging that in building the journeys as we go for each of the distinct customers that are coming to stay at Wyndham. One other thing that I just want to touch on, and I'm looking at I'll promise, Helen, I'll turn it back to you in just a second, but some interesting questions here in the chat, one on cultural diversity and another on what special ways do we have to protect those 86 million loyal customers. This concept of cultural diversity, we're also talking a lot about not only cultural diversity, but also geographic diversity. And those are a couple of the ways that we're starting to get increasingly personalized as well, right? And so if you're sitting in China versus sitting in the United States versus sitting in Germany, chances are you're going to get different versions of emails that we're sending out. And that, again, could incorporate cultural aspects. It could incorporate geographical aspects as well. And those are all helpful to the second question around how do you protect the 86 million members? That's one important way to do it, right? Making sure that you're meeting the customers where they are in the way that they want to be met, and engaging with them in those very personalized ways.
Mm-hmm. Hey. Thank you, Elliot. I think these discussions really lead us into another interesting segue into this emerging trend with the travel subscriptions that I find it very interesting. For example, like a Delta subscription model, they're offering boarding perks and hotel subscriptions, capitalizing on like workations, targeting a new wave of remote workers. So it has been very interesting to see how fast travel and hospitality companies have pivoted to these newer products for experimentation. So I want to hear about what's your view on this overall subscription models, and maybe we can start from Ashwin. Do you think the subscription, these new products and models will foster loyalty and resilience at a fundamentally different level? And what's your view on this trend?
Okay, great question. So I think what we're seeing is a bit of an attempt from certain companies to have more ownership of the customer relationship. It remains to be seen how this all plays out. I do worry that there may be a bit of overkill. I mean, I don't know about you, but I sit down at my TV to watch a movie with my kids, and I don't know if that movie is going to be on Hulu or Disney or Netflix or HBO Max, and suddenly I have probably 8 or 9 different subscriptions that I'm paying every month to be able to have the premium access to all these different channels. And so I worry about what the travel industry will look like a year from now when, all of these new subscription models come out and customers are faced with all these new choices. So I think it's an interesting development, especially I think what TripAdvisor has come out with, and now apparently Expedia is trying to, kind of answer to that. There is a huge potential there, in my view, for TripAdvisor to come out and emerge as a major player if they're capable of weaving together all of their key departments to offer something of really great value. But as I was saying earlier, I think in order to do that, TripAdvisor or any other company has to be able to offer the customer something that goes beyond what they are going to get from that hotel directly, right? So just in my personal view, if it's, hey, join our program and you may get a discount and you may get an upgrade, I think it has to go a lot further than that. I think from a hotel company perspective, hotels are also coming out with subscription models. One of the things I wanted to say earlier, and I'll kind of tie it into this, is that there has to be more focus on customer lifetime value. And I think one of the challenges that hotel companies have is that they're still very siloed as organizations. And I'm sure Elliot probably doesn't have this problem, but I've seen countless times where in a hotel company, you've got the loyalty department, the e-commerce department, maybe even third-party distribution in another department, technology in another department, even operations. And sometimes all of those aren't thinking along the same lines of how do we go out there, use AI if it's, if we have access to it, to identify who the potential customers are that have that desired customer lifetime value, and what do we have to do as a company to attract, retain, and win over those customers emotionally. I can tell you from experience, if you sit down with sometimes the e-commerce department of a hotel company and you say, hey, this company over here has 2 million consumers that perfectly match the profile of what looks like a high customer lifetime value customer for your hotel group. Now, what could we invest together to attract those people? What kind of offer could we put out there to get those people to come try out your product? And the likelihood is they'll be customers for 5-10 years, and the distribution team will say, nope, we only pay Expedia 15, 20, we're not going to pay anything more than that. And it's very transactional, right, the way they think about it. And so I just think from a top-down, companies really have to focus on customer lifetime value, unite the organization around attracting and retaining those customers. And that's the only way I think these subscription models will be successful, is if that kind of thinking comes into how the subscription model is defined, defining the value that's going to be given back to that customer, and how happy the customer feels that they're joining this subscription and what they're getting out of it.
Hey, excellent point, Ashwin. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add to Ashwin's point about the trend on subscription models?
Sure, yes. So we're seeing a variety of movement around this, trend of not so much focused on just subscription models, but, new business models like subscriptions. Mm-hmm. And that's to hold the attention of travelers, to build loyalty, and, much to Ashwin's point, provide flexibility that not just travelers are looking for, but businesses are looking for as well. So, we're still in the mode where positives quickly get squashed by, a new variant spike somewhere, or infection rates increasing. And, that has a most inevitable reduction in travel capacity. So brands are starting to be creative around solutions that can augment their business, rather than moving it just to a subscription model or getting rid of their loyalty programs. It's really augmenting their experiences around loyalty that provides them with flexibility and the customer with flexibility. And this is what is going to help to reduce churn. It can even be leveraged to, create new areas of customer acquisition. We heard earlier about partnerships. Maybe there's opportunity around bringing partnerships together to actually, come up with subscription models that can leverage partners' loyalty members and incorporate them into hotel brands. So I think that, there's also opportunities around the future of work where, subscriptions have been designed specifically around remote workers or digital nomads or workations that really address working from home fatigue, which I'm sure we've all felt. And the opportunities around augmenting, larger commitment subscriptions, whether that looks like a timeshare with rental flexibility, or, luxury member subscriptions that we've seen for all you can travel. I just think that this is a very exciting time for our industry, with plenty of options to really get creative and explore this area around loyalty and subscriptions that's really going to power the coming generation of hotel brands, and provided that it can be implemented in a way that still proves value, much to Elliot's point around, proving value for the brand, proving value for the owners, and of course, the brand's guests.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Subscription-based products, I think that can address some of the complementary needs from consumers. And we'll see in the future how much it will gain traction, and also whether subscription products will come out much more sophisticated and even personalized. Today's theme, fitting to our today's theme on personalization. So we are quite tight on time because there's so much interesting topics in this area to discuss. I'm going to pick one of the questions from the chat, and probably Elliot, you could help us. Do you believe that loyalty programs should be used as a currency with your customers, or for forming long-term relationships? And depending on the answer, the approach to loyalty changes. Would you agree?
My short answer to that would be yes and yes. So I do think that the value of a program for many guests who stay is the currency, right? This concept of earn and burn. There's a lot written about whether that's here to stay. I am of the belief that it will be, at least for a handful of years to come here. But that needs to be, and I'll pick up on a word that Jacqueline used, which resonates a lot with me. That needs to be augmented with, maybe I'll tie it in with something David said as well, an emotional connection, right? So it's not just about the points that you earn and the points that you burn, but you need to feel some level of connection to a brand in order for those points to be meaningful, right? Millions of Wyndham Rewards points are only valuable if you want to go stay at a Wyndham hotel, right? Or at a Wyndham hotel within the Wyndham Rewards portfolio. And so this concept that David spoke about of creating that emotional connection, whether you're one hotel or 29 hotels or 9,000 hotels, is paramount to engaging and retaining customers. And for us, and I think for a number of our competitors, leveraging the currency of a rewards program, I think will still sit for a number of years at the core of that relationship. But the emotional connectivity is absolutely critical to maintaining engagement over time.
Yeah, Helen, just a very quick comment there. I think I would encourage everybody to expand our thoughts of what is currency, because if you're Mandarin Oriental or Belmont Collection, where you want to have something related to loyalty, but you don't want a points program and you want experiences, well, then those experiences are your currency, and that's the currency of your program.
Awesome. Wow. So we had like 1 hour, doesn't feel like 1 hour. This is already the end of the hour. Maybe how about we quickly take turns and hear from each of our panelists, wonderful panelists, 30 seconds on your closing thoughts on the future of loyalty and evolving nature of the loyalty. Any closing remarks?
Well, sure. I'll start. I think that, it's an extremely exciting time for brands to be able to explore what loyalty actually needs to look like in the future. I think it's a really good time to be able to start to leverage all of the data in a way that can really connect with customers. I love David's story about how, their brand connects with customers on an emotional level, and bringing that in, and also making sure that you're leveraging your technology to free up your associates' time. So thinking about all of the processes that have, kept us in silos in our industries, how do we bring that together so that we can work more cohesively and focus on the customer, so that we can continue to have relationships with customers in the future as we build what, hospitality's industries, loyalty actually looks like for the future.
Great. Ashwin, do you want to follow?
I'll jump in next. I agree. It's an extremely exciting time, but it's also a very, very complex time. We didn't really touch on this, but I think with the regulations that are coming out around customer data, how they're to be shared, how they're to be treated, which definitely should be happening, but it does create a level of complexity around how we continue to build loyalty programs and especially collaborations across company. In terms of diversity, I think was one of the questions that Elliot touched on. I think we're going to see a hotel in New York saying, I want more customers to come from Mexico. Well, I'll offer points at the most popular grocery store in Mexico if they come stay here. And those kinds of opportunities are now becoming a reality. So I'm very excited to see where we end up a year from now.
Okay, thank you so much. Dave or Elliot, want to jump in?
Go for it, Dave.
Yeah, I think it's been touched on a little bit, but I think the next 5 years will probably bring more evolution and growth to loyalty, particularly in the hospitality sector, than the last 30. And I think it's going to be a fascinating time. I think the pandemic has accelerated much of this. I can only imagine, some of those early days at Elliot and his peers at the other brands, the conversations they were having about how do you engage with your loyalty and your loyalty members and your customers through this. And I think, it's going to be fascinating to see how some of these bigger programs are going to evolve, and the numbers that they can purely touch through all of that is going to be really impressive. And so I think we're going to see more evolution in the next 5 years than we have in a very long time. It's a good time to be a customer, is my theory as well.
Yes, it is. I'll end with two words that I think sum up a lot of what we talked about. The first of which is flexibility, and the second of which is personalization. I think all of us, no matter what seat we sit in, either as franchisors or owner-operators, consultants to the industry, or guests, flexibility is going to be the name of the game. We need to be adaptable. This function, not the industry, but the function of loyalty will change rapidly and significantly over the next 5 to 10 years. And we all need to be cognizant of not resting on our laurels and not maintaining business as usual, and be able to adapt quickly. And David, you're right. The agility and the nimbleness with which graduate hotels can operate is music to my ears. And so the more of that, the better, again, irrespective of the seat that you sit in. And then on personalization, we talked a lot about it. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach that works well here. You need to be where your guests are, where your members are, and be able to meet their needs, which are widely variable in nature. And so making sure that you're cognizant of that and are personalizing experiences along the way will be critical.
Awesome. It's so exciting that the industry is still learning, experimenting, and improving, innovating various ways to engage with the customers. And from a customer psychologist's point of view, we are moving away from not just aspirations, status points, but really being more inclusive, adding more fun, and being relevant to the community, community-minded. So it is really awesome how we are evolving with our loyalty mindset. Thank you for all these wonderful panelists for today's session. And thanks everyone for joining us and engaging with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.